Finally, at long last, I am able to carve out time to do my 2022 NFL season predictions. This is Steel Sermon in the house, and I am currently recording this on Saturday, August 20th, as I have a pretty good idea about where most teams will be come this 2022 season, and I have organized all my thoughts. So, these are my 2022 NFL season predictions. Now, a couple things before I begin. I will be going division by division, and if you're new to my channel and my old-time subscribers know this really well, I will actually be going from last to first. So, just kind of to pyramid it up a little bit, get the bad out of the way, and end up with the good. Also, I will not be doing Super Bowl predictions in this video, as I will be saving that towards mid-season, because then I feel like I know who the real contenders are. But I will be giving seeding predictions, as I always do, for every NFL season predictions as preseason and training camp winds down. So, let's get on to it. These are my 2022 NFL season predictions. Starting things off in the AFC East. In last place, to no one's surprise, I got the New York Jets. Now, the Jets, they don't have a talented roster, at all. The biggest headline with them, obviously, was the quarterbacks coming into the season. It was going to be between Zach Wilson, if he could blossom into a second-year starter. But the unfortunate news with the Jets, Zach Wilson tore his ACL in preseason last week, and he is unfortunately out for the rest of the season. I send my deepest thoughts and prayers to him. You never want to see anyone go down like that, especially a young kid like Zach Wilson. So that probably will give the green light for Joe Flacco to start. I heard that he has heavily been rumored to start week 1 against, ironically, his old team, the Baltimore Ravens. But aside from that, there's not really much to say about the Jets. They did have a decent O-line last year. They were 12th in the O-line last year, according to PFF. They drafted Garrett Wilson, added C.J. Uzomah from the Bengals. Elijah Moore's there. Corey Davis is still there. And, of course, Braxton Berrios. But aside from that, this is a team that just doesn't really run, and they're not really effective with it at all. They're 32nd in rush last year. Their only bright spot being Michael Carter, and they drafted Breece Hill to supplement that a little bit. Their offense last year was just dreadful. 28th in points per game, 26th in yards per game. And the defense was way worse. And when I say way worse, I'm talking about they were the worst statistical defense last year. They were pretty much last in every category. Of course, Marcus May was out, but that doesn't excuse it. Ashton Davis, probably going to get some more time there. And a big question mark around Bryce Hall as well. They drafted Sauce Gardner. I thought that was a really good pick for him. Jordan Whitehead also in the mix as well. LaMarcus Joyner's there. They added DJ Reed as well. Brandon Echols needs to make an impact. They added Carl Lawson as well. And, of course, drafted Jermaine Johnson. So, couple bright spots right there for the Jets. John Franklin Myers and Quinnen Williams are there. C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams are a really good 1-2 punch for this team. But overall, this is just a really incomplete team and a team that's not going to be competitive. So, expect the Jets to finish in last place this year. I got them going with a record of 4-13. In third place, may surprise some of you, but in third place, the New England Patriots. Now, I know the Patriots kind of overachieved last year. They went 10-7, I believe. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC at one point for a couple weeks, but then they kind of dipped the final few weeks of the season. Then, of course, they got blown out by the Bills in the wild card. A game in which the Bills scored on every single possession that they had the ball, which I think is an NFL first. But I could be mistaken. But anyway, I just really don't think New England is as good as people say. I mean, their offense is okay. Nothing terrible, but nothing great. It's just very average. And okay offenses aren't going to get you very far. That's just how it is. Last year, 6th in points per game, 15th in yards per game. But they were really sloppy with the ball. They look good statistic-wise, but it just doesn't kind of match how they actually performed. So the biggest headline, Mac Jones entering his second year. Pretty good rookie season, all things considered. 22 touchdowns, 13 picks, a 92.5 rating. Pretty good. So he's going to have a lot of pressure to face with his sophomore year. However, New England was 25th in pass attempts. They did not pass the ball a lot, so I feel with them having the 8th most rush attempts, it's going to put some pressure on Mac Jones to make him a pocket passer. They have no clear number ones as far as their receivers go. They have a bunch of number 2 and number 3's receivers. And once again, average offenses are not going to get you very far. Jacoby Myers, he might be their number 1 guy right now, but he would not be a number 1 on other teams. They do have Kendrick Bourne. I will say he is an effective deep threat, and they added Devontae Parker, which I like. But Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, it's just a very underwhelming set of receivers that they got as far as the wideouts go. Their O-line is still pretty strong. They were 8th in O-line last year, and they allowed the 3rd fewest sacks last year. So I'd say that's the strongest part of their offense. They drafted Cole Strange to add to that O-line. And then, of course, Damian Harris last year. I think that O-line is going to open up the holes for him. He had 929 yards on the ground last year, 15 touchdowns. And, of course, Ramondre Stevenson as well. So, overall, this Patriots offense has holes in it, but it's nothing incredibly terrible while not being great. The strongest part of the Patriots is that they're strictly a defensive team. They were 2nd in points per game last year, 4th in yards per game. They had the number 2 ranked pass defense, and as I said, they allowed the 2nd fewest yards per game. So overall, this Pats defense is really good, but not having J.C. Jackson, that's going to hurt them. And they added an old face of Malcolm Butler. Obviously, we all know him from his memorable Super Bowl 49 game-sealing interception on Russell Wilson at the goal line. Jonathan Jones is there. Adrian Phillips is there. Devin McCourty's still there. So, obviously, the secondary is pretty good for the Pats. Their pass rush, very underwhelming. 18th in sacks last year, 23 in QB hits. Matthew Judon was really their only consistent pass rusher, so he's going to have to step it up. Kyle Van Noy is gone. Jamie Collins and Chase Winovich are also gone as well. Rush defense just got gashed last year, 25th in the rush defense. And at Dante Hightower, that was a really big loss for them as well. They added Mac Wilson. So I feel like if the Patriots are going to replicate what they did last year, they got to have their front 7 to be as impactful as it was. And the offense just needs to go ballistic. And Mac Jones proves that he can be a good pocket passer instead of looking like a check down artist or a game manager like Alex Smith was. So I have to take a win off of New England last year because of the losses they've had and an unsure future of Mac Jones. So still, I think the Patriots are a 500-ish team this year, and I got them going 9-8, finishing 3rd in the East. Second place, the Miami Dolphins. Now, they had a pretty crazy offseason with the whole Brian Flores thing. I'm not going to get too into depth with it, but they have some pretty big expectations coming this year. Their offense last year kind of stale, 22nd in points per game, 25th in yards per game. Devontae Parker, as I just mentioned, he's gone, but they did add the cheetah in Tyreek Hill. Always good for a 1,000-yard-plus receiving season, and his speed is uncanny. Tua has to have some kind of rebound, and he has to perform as advertised. 16 touchdowns last year, 10 picks, a 90.1 rating. Not bad, just kind of average in my opinion, but it looks like he's evolving into a starter. And then, of course, you look at the receivers they do have outside Tyreek Hill now. Jalen Waddle had a pretty impressive season. He had 1,015 yards through the air last year, so a good year for him. He's going to be facing some pressure for his second year, it looks like. Cedric Wilson and Mike Gesicki, if I'm pronouncing his name right, are there. As far as the O-line, they were middle of the road in sacks allowed, but they really didn't allow a whole lot of pressure, so the O-line's going to have to step it up a bit. Tyron Armstead, adding to the mix right there. And they were 31st in rush last year, so they don't really run the ball a whole lot, and it doesn't look like they're effective with it. But with the additions of Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and Sony Michel, they're hoping to improve that run game right there. As far as the defense goes, it's pretty much the same lineup. They were 16th in points per game last year, 15th in yards per game. They had the 8th most takeaways. So Miami's defense is serviceable, but certainly not elite. Their pass rush was ranked 5th, and they allowed the 5th most sacks, and they were 3rd in pressure. So that seems to be the meat of this Miami defense right here. Their pass defense, pretty effective as well. It was ranked 6th by PFF last year. And their rush defense is okay, but nothing terrible. Emmanuel Ogbah is a really good piece for him. 9 sacks last year on 24 QB hits. Jalen Phillips, another really good physical guy. 8.5 sacks in his first year. Looking to add on to his second year in the league. Christian Wilkins is there. Jerome Baker's there. And they added Xavier Howard and Nick Needham in the slot corner position, along with Byron Jones and Javon Holland. So, overall, this Miami team has a bunch of good young players. And I don't think they're going to get off to the start that they had last year with the addition of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle coming on the scene. I'm going to bump Miami up a win. It's going to, be a little bit of a transition now that Brian Flores ain't there no more. But I think this Miami team is more than capable of being competitive. I got Miami finishing with a record of 10-7. And winning the AFC East for the 3rd consecutive season, the Buffalo Bills. In my eyes, this is the most complete team in the league, and I'll even go on par to say that I think they're the best team in the league. Not a lot to improve with the Buffalo Bills, at least with offense. They were 3rd in points per game last year, 3rd in yard per games last year, 5th most passes, and they allowed the 2nd fewest sacks. 13th most pass attempts too. This Buffalo Bills team is explosive as it gets. It all starts with their quarterback, Josh Allen, who put up MVP-type numbers last year, although he needs to cut it down on the interceptions a bit. But still, 36 touchdown passes, 15 picks, and a rating above 90 is always a fantastic season. And, of course, those 4,407 yards passing, you got to put this guy in the mix of the MVP talks. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Looking at their weapons, Stephon Diggs, great number 1 receiver, 103 catches last year for 1,225 yards and 10 scores. Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley are both gone, though, so you put Jamison Crowder in the mix there. Gabe Davis is a really good number 2 for them as well. Dawson Knox, a star at tight end. But they did lose Darrell Williams, but the O-line is still really good, and they're very high on Devin Singletary to improve on his 870 yards on the ground last year. So this Bills offense is just dynamic and explosive, and it will beat you up. As far as the defense goes, it's pretty much the same as their offense. It's kind of on the same level. The Bills were 1st in points per game, 1st in yards per game, and they had the 3rd most takeaways. This Bills defense is elite as they come. The pass defense was pretty much 1st in every category last year, and it's just, it's just physical, aggressive, and they will just come up with plays in every opportunity possible. However, losing Wallace and drafting Khair Alim will be a fill-in for the Bills, a little bit of a transition. But Tre'Davious White's still a sensational talent that they got there. He's an all-pro, no doubt about it. Taron Johnson is there, Jordan Poyer there, and Micah Hyde on the secondary. That's going to be a really good dynamic duo there. The pressure up front and the pass rush is effective, really, as well. 2nd in pressure last year. Could do a little bit better in sacks, but still 11th in sacks is respectable, and they were 19th in QB hits, so that's where you put in Von Miller. He is old, but he's still useful. I think the Bills low-key overpaid for him, but never hurts to have a veteran, especially like him in the mix right there. Ed Oliver developing into a star with them. Greg Rousseau, of course, developing as well, and the rush defense could be a little bit better, but still 11th, respectable, pretty much the same as the sack total they had. Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano are really good players for him. So overall, this Bills team, no doubt about it, are a Super Bowl contender. And just with the additions and what they did improve on the offseason, I'm going to bump Buffalo up a couple more wins. And I honestly think the Bills finish up with the best record in the NFL this year. Buffalo, I think, gets their ceiling this year with a 15-2 season. Buffalo is just going to be a very, very difficult team to beat, and expect this team to possibly make it back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1993. As you guys all know, I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so I will now be moving down to my division, the AFC North. And finishing last in the AFC North, I actually have the Cleveland Browns. I know a lot of people are saying the Browns are going to be great this year, the Browns are going to do this year, but here's the thing. How many years in a row have we heard this about the Browns? Every year since 2019. With the exception of 2020, the Browns have not lived up to the hype. That's all there is to it. And the biggest offseason move for them, Deshaun Watson's on the team now, which sounds amazing for him, but two big things. $246 million over 5 years for this guy is going to put them over the cap. And it's going to start hindering them sooner rather than later. And the second and biggest, most important thing right now, because they're going to be over the cap, at least for next year, way over the cap, I should say, Deshaun Watson is suspended for the first 11 games of the season because of the off-field controversy that he's had with the massage parlor. So anyone in Cleveland, any chick in Cleveland, keep your guard up. That's all I'm going to say. So what's their answer at quarterback while Deshaun Watson is gone? They added Josh Rosen and Jacoby Brissett. And you might say, well, what about Baker Mayfield? Baker Mayfield is now down in Carolina. So Cleveland is screwed for almost the first 75% of the season with Deshaun Watson being out. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's proven to be a viable backup, but he's not the long-term stability guy. And Josh Rosen is almost on journeyman status. So Browns, you're screwed when it comes to quarterback for 75% of the season. The offense last year, very Jekyll and Hyde. 20th in points per game last year, 18th in yards per game. They were 28th in pass attempts, and they were 27th in sacks allowed. So this Browns offense, very boomer bust, and let's just say it looked more like a bust last year. But it's not to say that their O-line isn't good, it just needs some continuity with it. However, that's where Deshaun Watson comes in. When he is playing, he is a very good dual-threat quarterback. He likes to use his leg, and he's not interception prone at all. You know, he's very careful with the ball. He doesn't make a whole lot of mistakes with the ball. So if he can live up as advertised, the Browns should be a good team, all things considered. But since this guy is not going to be playing in almost 2 years now, it's going to be interesting to see how he is when he comes back. You know, that's where their receivers come in. Donovan Peoples-Jones, they are really anticipating him to step up to the range this year. They added Amari Cooper in the offseason, who's a good threat with them. He's not really a number one receiver, but, you know, because he has pretty much number two receiver numbers, but still Amari Cooper, I think, can put up some good leadership roles for them. Austin Hooper is gone. He wasn't really productive with them, so David Njoku's chance to finally show his worthiness at tight end. But the Browns' bread and butter with their offense comes on their run game. That's one thing I've never taken away from them. They have a great run game. And it starts with Nick Chubb. He's good for 1,200 plus yards when he's playing every single game, and it shows, and that's what he did last year. But they did lose Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt is gone, so Dearness Johnson needs to fill in that role for Hunt. Dearness Johnson did show that he is a good, serviceable second-string running back, but the pressure's going to be on him more now because he didn't have to worry about Kareem Hunt a whole lot, but now that Kareem Hunt's gone, Dearness Johnson's name's going to be called up. So overall, the Browns have the talent on offense, but it's just a matter of, are they going to live up as advertised? Defensive side of the ball, the Browns, I think they're a little bit better defensively. but still not elite in my opinion. 13th in points per game last year, 5th in yards allowed. The biggest strength of the Browns, like a lot of defenses nowadays in the league, is their pass defense. Everyone on their secondary is back. Starts with Denzel Ward. John Johnson is back, and of course Greedy Williams. They were 9th in sacks last year, which is very respectable, top 10 numbers. Starts with Myles Garrett, who had 16 sacks last year. And if it wasn't for a certain guy over, southeast of Cleveland, who I'll be getting into in a little bit, he probably would have led the league in sacks and won Defensive Player of the Year. But still, Myles Garrett is a stud. Jadeveon Clowney back with the team with 9 sacks last year, looking to improve on that. Chase Winovich is there. With the inside linebackers, it's going to be on a bit of a rotation with several guys in there. But their 12th ranked rush defense is a little bit of a question mark. Not terrible, but a little bit respectable. They just need to up it up a little bit. Anthony Walker and Jeremiah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, is there as well. So overall, the Browns should be a good team on paper, but I have to knock them down to last place because Deshaun Watson's going to miss most of the season and just uncertain futures, uncertain answers with their backup quarterbacks right now. 6-11 is my prediction with the Browns. They could do a heck of a lot better. I am not denying that, but just no Deshaun Watson and Josh Rosen and Jacoby Brissett. You can't rely on either one of them to give you 11 strong games. So that's why I think the Browns are going to go 6-11 this season. Cheer up, Cleveland. Maybe you'll do better next year. Third place, we got my team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, I'm saying we finished third this year because it is a very interesting year for us. New era. Big Ben retired in the offseason. First time the Steelers will have a quarterback not named Ben Roethlisberger start a full season since 2003. So a very interesting year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we're still trying to find out who to start. Mitch Trubisky right now is the popular option to start week 1 against the Bengals, but we'll see. Kenny Pickett's been shining at camp. Mason Rudolph's been incredibly surprising at camp. So it's a little bit of a good problem to have, because Mitch Trubisky, he's not going to be here long term. He's just a bridge guy. And if Kenny Pickett is living up as advertised at training camp, we're confident that we could find another good starting quarterback for the long term. And Mason Rudolph, he's actually the longest tenured starting quarterback on this team. He's entering his 5th year with the team now, so he knows the system the best out of the 3. So it's a little bit of a good problem to have with the Steelers at quarterbacks, actually. But we'll see. It's an interesting puzzle piece. Looking at our receivers, Deontay Johnson has to play like he earned that extension. And he really elevated his game up last year. 1,161 yards, 8 touchdowns last year. Cut down on the drops, which everyone here was criticizing him for. So Deontay Johnson, while he may not be a number 1 receiver, he is probably the best overall receiver on this team. So he has to play like he earns that extension. George Pickens drafted him. And Calvin Austin III drafted him. Both have very high potential to be very good receivers on this team. And they will be replacing Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington respectively. So not really big pressure points for them, but they have a lot of potential to be very productive stars on this receiving core. You couple that with a young guy like Deontay Johnson, we got a good young nucleus right here at the receiving core. Which leads me into Chase Claypool. Step it up. Very disappointing year in his second year last year after he burst on the scene in his rookie year. He has to step it up. If he claims that he's a top 3 receiver in the league, he better frickin' step it up. That's all I gotta say for Chase Claypool. Pat Freiermuth, a very good surprise at tight end last year. 60 catches, 497 yards, and 7 scores. So the Steelers are high on Pat Freiermuth as well. Najee Harris, who we drafted in the first round last year, enters his second year. And he's becoming quite a good dual-threat running back, kind of like what Brian Westbrook was back in the day with the Philadelphia Eagles. The only difference is Najee's more of a downhill runner. but when he catches 74 passes for 467 yards and 3 scores, that's showing that he can be productive through the air. On the ground, lived up as advertised. 1,200 yards on the dot with rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. And considering that this O-line was one of the worst in the league last year, that is a massive dub for Najee Harris. I am very excited to see what this guy is going to bring in his second year, especially with the fact that we fixed up the offensive line. Not a lot, but a little bit. But still, the O-line was ranked 25th last year, allowed 38 sacks last year. That obviously has to improve big time. A lot of that, yes, has to do with the fact that Ben was 39 and he can't use his legs and extend plays like he used to. But still, you got younger guys starting at quarterback this year. I expect the offensive line to be more productive this year. Not a whole lot, but I expect it to be better than 25th. The Steelers, as I said, well, as I should have mentioned, actually, the 4th most pass attempts last year. So what's that say about the offense? It can't be one-dimensional like everyone thinks that Matt Canada is. I know what Matt Canada's offense is like, and I know that it's not one-dimensional like this. As far as the O-line, getting back to that, Dan Moore Jr. and Chooks are back, and then James Daniel and Mason Cole added in the offseason as well. And center is still a little bit of an uncertain future. I don't know if Kendrick Green is going to get the center position still, or if we take our chances, platooning them a little bit, but we'll see. Offense as a whole, very stale. 21st in points per game last year, 23rd in yards per game. So I expect the offense to look a little bit better. Defensive side of the ball, pretty disappointing last year when you consider that this was supposed to be one of the best defenses in the league, especially how they played the previous 2 seasons. 20th in points per game, 24th in yards per game. The rush defense allows like 5 yards on the ground. I mean, our rush defense was always suspect to begin with, but I just expected to step up better. Our biggest hole outside of a couple secondary issues, in my opinion, with this defense has to be with the inside linebacker, and I think a lot of Steeler fans can agree with me when I say that. Tyson Alualu, that's a big question mark. Is he going to be healthy to play for this whole season? We'll see. So that's where you bring in Miles Jack. And we brought in Miles Jack because that trash can number 55, Devin Bush, comes in and says, I still expect to be in the NFL next year. Oh, yeah, really? Then why are you just standing there like a freaking statue in the middle of the field and letting running backs run right past you, boy? I mean, how much more of a self-centered prick can you be to just have the balls to come out and say that when you're playing in what should be a contract year, man? But anyway, that's my biggest gripe with Devin Bush. Miles Jack is doing his job. And as I'm recording this, the Steelers ironically play the Jaguars tonight, which is where we got Miles Jack from. Miles Jack was supposed to help Devin Bush, but, I guess you just can't fix stupid. That's all there is to it. Moving on to the pass side of the ball, the pass defense allowed the 9th lowest completions last year, so major props to them for that, which is where we extend Minkah Fitzpatrick, looking to have a bounce-back year as well. Terrell Edmonds, I'm constantly up and constantly down on this guy for good reason. He's very inconsistent, but if he can elevate his game slightly like he did last year, I wouldn't have a problem with him still being at the safety position. Cam Sutton's there. Micaiah Witherspoon extended. I love that. I think he is our best corner on the team this year, and I think he has to play like he earned that extension so he can be a top corner. That's going to be some pretty big shoes to fill in because Joe Hayden is gone. I agree with that. He was getting old. He was injury prone, which I knew was a gamble when we signed him back in 2017. But Joe Hayden's time needed to come, unfortunately, which is where we add Levi Wallace from the Buffalo Bills. He was overshadowed by Tre'Davious White, but Levi Wallace, I think, is a really good addition to the secondary. But the strength of our defense is by far our pass rush. It is elite. The pass rush is elite. The defense itself may not be elite, but the pass rush is. 8th highest pressure percentage last year, and of course had the most sacks, which is where number 90 comes in. TJ Watt, 22.5 sacks last year, tied Michael Strahan's record back in 2001, and he finally got the Defensive Player of the Year award. Should have gotten it either one of the past 2 seasons, but TJ Watt, better late than never, I suppose. Chris Wormley is back. He had 7 sacks last year. Cam Hayward, he has really evolved on the scene over the past few years. Got to the quarterback 10 times last year. Great veteran, leadership role to that defensive line right there. Alex Highsmith came off as well with 6 sacks last year. So a really good nucleus with the pass rush right here, with a very spotty pass defense that needs to step it up. The coaching staff, Matt Canada, as I said, we all know the type of offense that he has with the RPOs. He's going to be under a microscope this season. Terrell Austin entering his first season as defensive coordinator. Brian Flores will be helping him out as he is a defensive assistant for him. He had great success in Miami calling defenses, so he'll be looked at heavily as well. And of course, Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, it's crazy to say that in his 16th season as head coach for us, I think this is a prove-it year for Mike Tomlin. Why? Because he had Big Ben as his quarterback for all these years, and he never had a losing season, which is impressive. But let's not forget, he had a Hall of Fame quarterback for his entire career. So that's why I think this is a prove-it year for Mike Tomlin. I do think that this team is good enough to keep Mike Tomlin's streak alive, but it's just not built to be a Super Bowl contender, not quite yet. Still, I think a 10-7 record for the Pittsburgh Steelers is respectable, considering the offseason we had and considering the personnel that we hope to put on the field. 10-7 is my prediction for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In second place, this was a coin toss, but in second place, the Cincinnati Bengals. Why on earth am I putting the team that went to the Super Bowl last year for the AFC in second place? I'll explain it. This Bengals team is very talented. The O-line's still very suspect, allowed 55 sacks last year, which was ranked 30th in the league, and it was 22nd ranked overall. You look at that playoff game where Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times against the Titans and then another 7 times in the Super Bowl. That's alarming enough. So the Bengals, their offensive line took a massive beating last year, which is where they put in 4 new projected starters and they pretty much replaced scrubs. So upgrades on the O-line for the Bengals right there, which leads into Joe Burrow entering his 3rd season in the league. Magnificent season for him last year, 34 touchdowns, 14 picks, and a 108.3 rating. Really good year for Joe Burrow. And of course, Jamar Chase, Rookie of the Year last year, ran away with it, breaking Justin Jefferson's record in receiving yards. 1,455 yards through the air for Jamar Chase last year, looking to build and maintain off of that. T. Higgins, a really good number 2 for him, had another 1,000-yard season. And then Tyler Boyd becoming a centerpiece for this offense and a good leadership for them with 828 yards through the air. Losing C.J. Uzomah, I think, will hurt a little bit, but not a whole lot. But Hayden Hurst, I think, will be a fine fill-in for him. On the ground, you got Joe Mixon. He's a good dual-threat runner. He's good for 300 receiving yards and 1,200 yards on the ground when he is at it completely. So the offense, you look at it, is really explosive, has potential to be a top 5 offense in the league. 13th in yards per game last year, 7th in points per game. This Bengals offense is very productive when they put their heart into it. Defense pretty much adding in the same group as last year. Defense is kind of mid-level in my opinion, but it is a work in progress. 18th in yards per game, 17th in points per game. Their rush defense, very plain, nothing terrible, but it's just kind of there, Same thing with the pass defense, just kind of average, and the pass rush, is respectable. It's a work in progress, but I think it's respectable enough to take it seriously with 12th, finishing 12th in sacks last year, 11th in QB hits. Trey Hendrickson last year, solid season, 14 sacks on 27 QB hits. Sam Hubbard's there, but they did lose Larry Ogunjobi to, guess who? Us. Larry Ogunjobi, that's something I forgot to mention for our defense. But, yeah, Larry Ogunjobi is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I think that B.J. Hill will probably get more reps for the Bengals. Chidobe Awuzui and Eli Apple, as far as the secondary goes. Eli Apple, may as well call him Apple Crisp, as he got torched in the Super Bowl all night long. You got Mike Hilton in the slot corner, who came from us, so a little bit of an Uno reverse card right there. And they drafted Daxton Hill. Von Bell, becoming a really good piece for that defense right there. And the biggest question as far as the Bengals defense goes, what are they going to do with Jesse Bates? Do they pay him? Do they decline him? What are they going to do? I think the Bengals ought to pay that guy. They got to lock him up because he is the strongest part of that secondary. But you put in Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, and it provides some continuity for this defense to go along with the offense as well. Overall, this Bengal team is a competitor. They should have no problem getting back in the playoffs if you look at it on paper. Worst case scenario for them, they suffer a Super Bowl hangover. But I think this Bengals team is good enough to win one more game than last year. 11-6. My prediction for the Cincinnati Bengals, another playoff spot for them. And much to my dismay, winning the AFC North this year, the Baltimore Ravens. You guys all know how I feel about the Ravens. I can't stand them. They're my most hated team in the NFL. If it wasn't for the Flyers, they'd be my most hated team in all sports. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say it. This Ravens team, when they are healthy, they are as good as any other team in the league. And that's the biggest, thing with the Ravens last year. They were 8-3 at one point, number one seed in the AFC, finished 8-9 last year, so they choked it. But it comes with a little bit of an asterisk that you can say because all the injuries that they had, not a lot of teams can come back from that. And it wasn't with just the offense, it was with the defense too, which is why the offense took a little bit of a beating. 17th in points per game last year, which we know can be a lot better. But as far as it being productive, we just know that it's just built to run. They didn't, run very much though last year. I mean, they were 9th in pass attempts before passing the least since 2019. So the Ravens are trying to get a little bit more experimental as far as the offense goes. Freeman and Murray in for Gus and J.K., that's good fill-in positions, but I expect both Gus and J.K. Dobbins to be healthy this year. They both suffered ACLs and are healthy now. So I expect Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins to be the 1-2 punch at running back. Lamar Jackson, we all know he can use his legs, 767 yards rushing. And then last year, trying to become more of a passer, but still kind of wobbly numbers. 16 touchdowns, 13 picks, a rating of 87. Lamar, he just is trying to become more of a passer, but it's just his numbers just don't do it justice. Obviously with Lamar, he missed the final 5 games last year. So I expect Lamar to be 100% good to go this year. Ravens offensive line, 57 sacks allowed. Everyone says the Steelers' offensive line is trash. Everyone says the Bengals' O-line is trash. Well, the Ravens' O-line allowed 57 sacks last year. So there you go with that. 17th in O-line somehow. That's pretty alarming considering they allowed that many sacks. As far as that goes, Ronnie Stanley lost. Bradley Bozeman gone, which is where they drafted Tyler Lindenbaum, a guy that I wanted us to get heavily. Morgan Moses there, and I think the rock of this offense has to be Mark Andrews without a shot of a doubt, with 1,300 yards receiving on 107 catches. I think the receiving corps is going to miss Hollywood Brown a little bit. They need a true number one receiver. So can Rashad Bateman step up to the reins right there, or can Devin Duvernay be that guy for them? Overall, this Ravens defense is talented, but they need to stay healthy. Defense side of the ball, they are getting a lot of players back from injuries, as I said. 19th in points per game last year, 25th in yards per game, and they were 27th in the pass. They allowed the highest pass attempts per game last year. So that defense obviously is going to get better this year. I expect it to, with Marlon Humphrey coming back. Anthony Averett, he was their top cover guy Marcus Peters missing all of last year. And then, of course, they put in Kyle Fuller. Brandon Stevens is there and added Marcus Williams from the New Orleans Saints. Chuck Clark, there as well. They drafted Kyle Hamilton for the rotation guy. Really good pickup for them. Although I don't think he's the next Ed Reed like a lot of Ravens fans are already saying. But we'll see. As far as pressure goes, their pressure is very messy. Bottom 3 in pressure, 22nd in sacks. But Tyus Bowser coming back, I think will give it a shot of adrenaline. Adolphe Olay, I expect him to have a bounce back year. Rush defense was the meat of this defense. If it wasn't for that, this would probably be a bottom 3 defense in the league. Second in the rush defense last year, and they allowed the second fewest yards on the ground, which is where Calais Campbell and Patrick Queen have to come in. So overall, like I said, it's a coin toss for me personally between the Ravens and the Bengals. But I think the difference for me personally is this. The Ravens, they can stop you on the ground, and they can stop a run game, and they can be productive in the pass. The Bengals, it's just more of a work in progress. If you ask me who's better offensively, I'd say it's the Bengals, but they still need to prove that and not suffer a Super Bowl hangover. The Ravens, we all know how good they can be. Overall, I think these two are very similar, but I would give the Ravens a slight one-up in the standings. But I still think they finished with the same record of the Bengals, 11-6, good enough for the playoffs. Moving on down now to the AFC South. Last place, I think we can all agree it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's just going to be a new regime in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson's the head coach now. Offense was dreadful, 32nd in points per game last year, a.k.a. last, 27th in yards per game. Trevor Lawrence entering his second season, and I think it's time to stop holding this guy's hands. He's had more than enough time to learn the game a little bit. I expect him to do way better than 12 touchdowns, 17 picks, and a 71.9 rating. O-line was really bad as well, 24th in the O-line last year. And you look at their targets, James Robinson is there. Travis Etienne was out all year last year. Zay Jones is in for DJ Chark, and they added Christian Kirk as well. Marvin Jones, putting in a solid year. And Lavisika Shenault, if I'm pronouncing that name right there as well. Also adding Evan Ingram and Dan Arnold. So, yeah, obviously the Jags just don't have a whole lot of talent as far as the offensive side of the ball goes. Trevor Lawrence is going to have to step it up. Defense, not much better. They had the fewest takeaways last year, 27th in sacks last year, and they were 29th in the pass. Not a whole lot of tweaks for them, but they have a few expectations for it to be better. Tyson Campbell is there, Rayshawn Jenkins there, Darius Williams there, Shaq Griffin still there, Andrew Wingard is there, and of course drafting Trevon Walker and Devin Lloyd. I think that's going to pump up Jacksonville a little bit. Josh Allen, proven to be a stud for them with 7.5 sacks last year, and Dwayne Smoot with 6 sacks as well. You add Kayvon Chisone. I think that's a good young nucleus that Jacksonville has to build up upon, but losing Miles Jack and Damian Wilson, I think that's going to hurt the defense tremendously, but Foyesade Olakun, I think that he will step up to the reins a little bit, but not enough to replace both of those guys. So overall, Jacksonville, they're just not really a talented team, and it's a new work in progress. They just don't have a whole lot to work with. 2-15 for the Jags, bottom tier of the league as usual. In third place, the Houston Texans. Talking about new eras, the Texans having a new era as well. Is Davis Mills going to be their starter? He looks like the guy because, you look at 16 touchdowns, 10 picks, 88.9 rating. I know that those aren't exactly eye-popping numbers, but when you consider that Houston had a lot of quarterback drama last year, I think he put up a respectable fight, but not a lot of pressure's being put on him. Houston, that being said, they don't have really that many pass catchers, but Brandon Cooks is serviceable. He's good for 1,000 yards. Nico Collins is there. Drafting John Mechie, they're high on that kid. Brevin Jordan and Farrell Brown are there as well, but the offensive line is just hideous. 31st ranked O-line last year, 24th in sacks allowed, which is where drafting Kenyon Green and drafting Kenyon Green, they're very high on him to fix up the O-line. They got to be able to fill up holes and open up holes for guys like David Johnson and Rex Burkhead and Marlon Mack, to get more reps as well. Houston's offense just 30th in points per game, 32nd dead last in yards per game. So Houston's offense, don't expect a whole lot from them this year. Defensive side, again, not much better. 27th in points per game, 31st in yards per game. Drafting Derek Stingley, they are very high on to fix that defense up a little bit. And Jalen Peachy in for Justin Reed. I think that they're going to hope for that to happen as well. Desmond King is there, but the pass rush being 27th in sacks is just jarring. Jonathan Greener, Christian Kirksey, and Camus Greer-Hill. I think those are your standouts right there. Overall, Houston, it's pretty much like a coin toss who's going to finish last place in this division, but I'm going to give it to the Texans finishing third because I think they have at least some idea of where they're going, unlike Jacksonville. But still, Houston's just going to be dreadful. 3-14, my prediction for the Texans. Second place, the Indianapolis Colts. So, another team with quarterback questions. Carson Wentz is out. Matt Ryan is in. But Matt Ryan, is he really the guy moving forward? Could this be Phillip Rivers 2.0? Matt Ryan entering in the twilight of his career. This is a guy that's rounding third and heading home with his career, in my opinion. But look at it, their offense. Last year, they were 9th in points per game, 10th in yards per game, 22nd in O-line pressure. Respectable numbers right there for the Colts. Frank Reich, though, if there's anyone that can make Matt Ryan come back to 2016 for him, it's him. He is a QB fixer-upper. And people laugh at Carson Wentz, but he had actually a respectable year in Indy last year. But the problem with him now is he's heading down to D.C. But they're confident that Matt Ryan can win them games this year. The meat of that offense, by far, Jonathan Taylor. He had MVP-type numbers last year, and he was my pick to win MVP last year. 1,811 yards rushing for Jonathan Taylor last year. I expect big games and big production from him this year. And that's why the Colts ran the ball the 5th most times last year, and they didn't pass a whole lot. 27th in pass attempts. As far as their receivers go, Michael Pittman, good for 1,000 yards. And he is by far their biggest target. He had 600 more receiving yards than their number 2 receiver. And, I mean, that's just how much that they target this guy. T.Y. Hilton and Pascal being gone are going to be big hits to that receiving core, but if anyone can make it a one-man show at the receiving game, it's Michael Pittman. Nothing really super to replace, though. It's just all about ball control and Matt Ryan coming in as needed. So that's pretty much the Colts' offense right there. Defense last year, pretty stingy. 33 takeaways last year, 9th in points per game, 16th in yards per game, 18th in the rush, 25th in sacks with an average pass rush. That's kind of a question mark, don't you think? But still, this Colts defense is stingy and it can be pretty productive. DeForest Buckner turned in a solid year for him. I expect him to have a good, productive year again. Yannick Ngakoue is there. 10-sack season for him last year. Expect him to build off of that. Kwity Paye needs to step it up, though, as does Kenny Moore. Xavier Woods being gone, I think that's going to be a little bit of a blow to the defense. So I expect Isaiah Rodgers to get more time out there. Stephon Gilmore, I think, can be a good replacement, though. Stephon Gilmore still very good pass defender. Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke, I think those are going to be a good 1-2 punch right there. So overall, this is a good Colts team, but are they good enough to be a Super Bowl contender? I don't know. But I have them finishing second place in the division again, and I'm going to give them another win at 10-7. And then winning the AFC South, I have the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, we all know the story around the Titans. This team is built around King Henry VIII. And last year, the offense showed it 15th in points per game, 17th in yards per game. Henry, despite missing over half the season last year, still had 900 yards on the ground, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. And as you can imagine, they were first in rush attempts. Did not pass the ball a whole lot with 26 pass attempts. And Tennessee's another team that has a little bit of a quarterback issue right now. Are they going to roll with Ryan Tannehill, or is Malik Wilson going to, get some playing time? But Ryan Tannehill last year, I think he's playing for a prove-it year. 21 touchdowns, 14 picks, 89.6. Respectable, but I think that he's on a little bit of a time constraint right now. He needs to step it up. This has to be a prove-it year for him. Receiving-wise for the Titans, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones are gone. They need to replace that, so adding Robert Woods, more of a good blocker, though. I think he can be serviceable for him. And drafting Treylon Burks, I think that will help out the receiving core a bit. Nick Westbrook is back. Jeff Swain, he's a using the two tight end system right there. Putting in Austin Hooper, I think that will ease the sting a little bit, but still, you lose two guys like that as far as the receiving core goes. You're going to have to do more than that. They had the 11th best O-line last year, but they did allow the most sacks last year, so obviously that is something the Titans are going to have to improve way better, and Mike Vrabel, with winning Coach of the Year, I think he can, muster that up. So why were the Titans as good as they were last year with the number one seed in the AFC? It's the defense. 6th in points per game, 12th in yards per game, 4th-ranked rush defense, and they had the 9th most sacks, and they were 9th in pass defense. Caleb Farley being back, Christian Fulton, Elijah Molden, Amani Hooker, Kevin Byard, of course, Danico Autry, Jeff Simmons, Henry Landry III, who had 12 sacks last year, Bud Dupree needing to step it up a little bit, David Long is there, Zach Cunningham. They just all need to stay healthy. I think Mike Vrabel has a good young defense at his disposal to build on. So overall, this is kind of the same team the Titans had from last year, but I'm going to dock them a win just because of, Ryan Tannehill having to play for a prove-it year, uncertain at the quarterback right there, and losing A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. I think that can hurt as well. But this is still a really good Titans team. I think they take the AFC South again with a record of 11-6. And finally, rounding out the AFC, going to the AFC West. And finishing in last place, this is the toughest division in football this year. And I think if there's going to be a division where all 4 teams can make the playoffs, I think it's this one. So finishing in last, or should I say the least best of these teams, but still pretty good on paper, Denver Broncos. The biggest offseason acquisition by far. Russell Wilson is their quarterback now, and he is going to make that offense way better than 23rd in points per game, 19th in yards per game. And when you look at how the Broncos were last year offensively, it's because their coaching and production was stale. 24th in pass attempts. That's what happens when you have Drew Lock as your quarterback. Wide receivers, they got a good young trio. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick. The tight ends also has some holes, though, losing Noah Fant. No proven replacement for him. And the O-line did get a little bit better. And I think that's going to benefit Russell Wilson's style, because up in Seattle, he had a horrible offensive line for practically his whole time in Seattle. But now he goes down to Denver. They have a better O-line there. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, obviously a really good duo at the run game right there. So really, this Bronco offense, I expected to be way better than what it was last year. Defensive side of the thing, the Broncos are still pretty strong. 8th in yards per game, 3rd in points per game. They had the 6th lowest pass they allowed the 6th lowest pass completions last year as far as their pass defense goes. So obviously this Bronco defense is pretty stingy, and it keeps them above water. Surtain shined as a rookie last year. I expect him to have a good sophomore year. Ronald Darby and Justin Simmons there. Losing Kyle Fuller is going to hurt them a little bit, but Callahan coming in the mix and adding Kwan Williams, I think, will help out. Pass rush could be better, but still 13th in pressure is respectable, but 18th in sacks has to be better. 25th most QB hits, and, you know, it's just going to have to improve, which is where Randy Gregory coming in. Bradley Chubb is healthy. Outside linebacker is a little bit of a question mark. Losing Shelby Harris, but getting an upgraded DJ Jones from the San Francisco 49ers. So I expect that to improve as long as their rush defense with Jonas Griffin as well. So overall, this Bronco team, I expect it to be better, but, you know, losing a guy like Noah Fant and not really having a replacement for him, and some more question marks as far as the offense goes, that's really what distinguishes me from putting them in last place in the AFC West. But still, I think Denver finishes around 500 and even above 500. 9-8, my prediction for the Denver Broncos. In third place, the Las Vegas Raiders. So, McDaniels is their head coach now, and he takes over for John Gruden for, you know, all the controversy that happened last year with him. The offense last year, he takes over an offense that was 18th in points per game. But the biggest thing with Vegas, Davante Adams is there. Got him from the Green Bay Packers. He will absolutely help out that offense. Hunter Renfrow and Waller as well. I mean, Vegas, they got some explosiveness on that offense there. And that's another big thing that I distinguish that from the Broncos. It's just more experience as far as their receivers go. Demarcus Robinson being there, too, will help. Derek Carr is still their quarterback, and a lot of people criticize Derek Carr, but I think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for because, you know, he's capable of being a serviceable starter. I just don't think he's elite. But still, 7th most throws for him last year, 23 touchdowns, 14 picks, a solid year for him. Just needs to cut down on the turnovers a little bit. You know, and the funny thing is, a Carr to Adams reunion, because that's what happened in college with those two, I think that is going to be a very exciting thing to happen in Vegas. As far as the O-line goes, it's back and healthy, and I think that's going to open up a lot more opportunities for Josh Jacobs, who needs to stop being pedestrian as far as his game goes. Overall, though, I think Josh Jacobs is a good piece for that offense, and then Kenyon Drake as well. Not really a big hurt losing Marcus Mariota because they didn't really use him for a lot of gimmicky play. Well, except for gimmicky plays, I should say. But overall, this Raider offense, I expect it to be better, throwing one of the top receivers in the mix. Defense, you know, defensive side of the thing needs to be better. 14th in yards per game, 26th in points per game. So I feel like Max Crosby's going to have the most pressure on him. He's a good QB hitter, but, you know, I think the lights are going to be on him to pretty much carry this defense, in my opinion. Chandler Jones is there. Losing Quentin Jefferson is going to hurt. So you put in Bilal Nichols. 24th in pass defense. That obviously has to improve. So there you bring in Trayvon Mullen coming in and Rock Ya-Sin as well. Anthony Averett coming in for the Baltimore Ravens, I believe. And Nate Hobbs is there as well. Trayvon Mooring, and the rush defense is strong, 10th in rush defense, so keep it up right there for the Raiders with Jayon Brown, Divine Diablo, Denzel Perryman, and Abram being there for the Raiders. So obviously this is a good group the Raiders have, and they could possibly make it back to the playoffs, and I think they're good enough to have another 9-win season. 9-8, my prediction for the Raiders. In second place, you may either really disagree with me on this or really agree with me on this. I really don't care. But in second place, the Kansas City Chiefs. That's right. I don't think Kansas City takes the West this year, and I'll explain why. How on earth could you be saying that a team that's made 4 straight AFC Championship games and has won the division every year since 2016 is not going to repeat as champions? I'll explain that in a little bit. Patrick Mahomes, career high in interceptions last year. Looks like defenses are starting to figure him out. Tyreek Hill being gone is the biggest blow to that receiving core. Byron Pringle, a great red zone threat for him, is gone as well. Demarcus Robinson, gone. So, how does Kansas City fill the void? Well, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I think he will be good enough for them. Juju Smith-Schuster, got from the Pittsburgh Steelers, low risk, high reward right there. Sky Moore has emerged. McCole Hardman looking really good. And they still got Travis Kelce at tight end, good for 1,125 yards and 9 touchdowns. You know, the thing with them is that they had to adapt mid-year because defenses figured Patrick Mahomes out, which is why the offensive line needs to maintain its form. You know, with Clyde Edwards coming in, Kansas City's just not really careful with the ball. They were 23rd in turnovers last year, and they had the most fumbles. So, still, this Kansas City offense is very deadly, no doubt about it. But I think it's going to take a severe blow with the offseason losses that they had. As far as the defense goes, 8th in points per game, 5th most takeaways. Kansas City's defense is getting a little bit better, but still 27th in yards per game, has to be way better than that. 17th in pass attempts, 29th in sacks, 9th in QB hits. Obviously, those have to improve as well. Chris Jones being there is always going to be helpful. Frank Clark is physical, but he is a low sack producer. George Karlaftis, who they drafted in the first round, I feel like he's going to help out that defense there. Losing their top corner in Ward and drafting Trent McDuffie's going to be interesting right there. Rashad Fenton and L'Jarius Sneed as well. Lonnie Johnson from Houston, but losing the Honey Badger is going to hurt that defense a lot. Justin Reed coming in, and the rush defense, second last in rush defense. They were just gashed all year by the run game. Derek Nadani and Willie Gay Jr. and Nick Bolton, though, they have to step it up, especially Bolton, who had a really good rookie year. So overall, what do I think of the Chiefs? Well, they're still a fantastic team, all things considered, but they are just going to look a little bit worse this year. Still obviously good enough for the playoffs. I got them going 11-6 this year. Good enough for the playoffs, obviously, but I just don't think they're going to be as dynamic as people say they are. So, winning the AFC West this year, I actually got the Los Angeles Chargers. I think this is going to be the team that emerges out of the AFC and finally plays up to advertise. Let's start with that stacked offense they got. 5th in points per game, 4th in yards per game, 3rd most pass attempts. Justin Herbert, MVP type numbers again. 38 touchdown passes, 15 picks, 97.7 rating. Great numbers for a second-year starter. Keenan Allen, a 1,000-yard season again. Mike Williams, another 1,000-yard season. Austin Eckler, Gerald Everett in for Jared Cook. Jalen Guyton and Josh Palmer. This Charger offense is electrifying. However, the O-line looking really good. I expect it to be a little bit better than 10th, though. But Zion Johnson being drafted, I think, will help out great. And the run game is very good with Eckler keeping defenses honest. This Charger offense, I think, is going to be top 5 in the league this year. They really made some strides with offense. That being said, the defense needs to step things way up. 23rd in yards per game, 29th in points per game. They obviously need some continuity as far as the defense goes to complement that offense, and I just don't think it's there right now. The rush defense was just plain awful when you look at it. The pass defense wasn't a lot better, but adding Khalil Mack will help out, in my opinion. Joey Bosa is still a stud. Austin Johnson in the D-line, Sebastian Joseph Day as well, Jerry Tillery, Asante Samuel Jr. in his second year, and then, of course, you got Mike Davis being a top corner, and J.C. Jackson, needs to live up to that contract that he got. Derwin James is still a necessity for him, Nasir Adderley and Kenneth Murray, along with Dre Tranquill. Charger offense needs to do a lot better than what it was last year, but I think the offense is going to be more than enough to keep them above water. Plus, they seem to be Kansas City's kryptonite within the division. They've beaten the Chiefs 3 out of the last 4 times at Arrowhead, and I think that that's going to be your difference maker right there. So yeah, LA Chargers, 12-5, my prediction for the Chargers, and I think they take the AFC West. So, my AFC seeding rankings. Again, you may disagree with this or you may agree with this, I don't care, but these are my predictions. I got the Buffalo Bills taking the first seed. LA Chargers, I think they take the second seed. The third seed this year goes to the Baltimore Ravens when they're fully healthy. And the fourth seed this year goes to the Tennessee Titans after having the first seed. The number 5 seed this year goes to Kansas City. I think the Cincinnati Bengals take the 6th seed. And call me a homer all you want, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are good enough to take the 7th seed in the AFC. All right, moving on to the NFC side of things. Starting off in the NFC East. In last place, I got the New York Giants. Joe Judge's head coach being gone, that absolutely needed to be the case for him. He was a terrible head coach. And the offense was arguably the worst in the league. 31st in points per game, 31st in yards per game, and they turned the ball over the most times in the league. Obviously, a lot of injuries will do that, but Daniel Jones not making strides, and Mike Glennon as your QB, and Jake Fromm starting towards the end of the season, that ain't going to do you a whole lot of favors. The O-line blows too. 27th in O-line last year, and they pretty much feature the same core. No real changes were made, and Daniel Jones looking like he's going to be their starter for the 4th year. Weapons at receivers, you got Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Shepard. Good core, but, not really productive last year. Evan Ingram being gone for them, and Ricky Seals-Jones being in, and drafting Evan Neal. What about Saquon Barkley? Are they going to keep him for another year? Is he going to play for a contract? We'll see. But overall, this Giants offense didn't really make a whole lot of changes. Defense wasn't better. 23rd in points per game, 21st in yards allowed, 29th in QB hits, and they had 22 hits altogether, or 22nd in hits altogether. It's just not a good defense. But Kayvon Thibodeau drafted for Lorenzo Carter. They have to be hopeful about that. Azeez Ojari with 8 sacks on 13 hits. Austin Johnson's gone. Leonard Williams is there. Dexter Lawrence trying to prove that he can really be a centerpiece for this defense. Tay Crowder needs to have a breakout year, and the secondary really downgraded. James Bradbury's gone, Logan Ryan are gone, and Jabril Peppers are gone. Aaron Robinson, he's there as well. Julian Love being there, Xavier McKinney there, and of course Adoree Jackson. So overall, this Giants team, I don't think they did much to come out of the basement, in my honest opinion. 5-12, my prediction for the Giants. Just another rough year for them. Third place, the Washington Commanders. Lots of changes in D.C. They even got a new name. How about that? The offense doesn't look like it changed a whole lot, with being 23rd in points per game, 21st in yards per game. And it looks like Taylor Heineke is still going to be their guy, but he had a little bit of a letdown year. 20 touchdowns, 15 picks, 85.9 rating. Is he the guy? I don't know, but that's why they got Carson Wentz in the offseason looking to be their guy. 27 touchdowns, 7 picks, a 94.6 rating. For the way everyone craps on him, he actually put up some respectable numbers. The O-line is middle tier with being 15th from last year, and the receivers last year with Terry McLaurin by far the most targets last year, and he turned in a 1,000 plus receiving yard. Jahan Dotson, they drafted to that receiving core, I think is going to help out. Curtis Samuel, though, needs to stay healthy. Logan Thomas needs to be healthy as well, and Antonio Gibson on the ground with a 1,000-yard rush season. I think he's going to be able to keep defenses honest. As far as the defense itself goes, 25th in points per game, 22nd in yards per game, a major disappointment for the defense after that's all everyone hyped up about 2020. Rush defense, though, was strong, being 8th, but 17th in sacks and 16th in QB hits obviously has to be better. Chase Young missed a lot of last year. He only played 9 games, but in those 9 games, he only had 1.5 sacks. Big disappointment from Chase Young. Montez Sweat needs to be healthy. Jonathan Allen a really good player for him with 9 sacks. Deron Payne being there. Drafted Fedarian Mathis, if I'm pronouncing his name right. Cole Holcomb is there. Jamin Davis is there. And, you know, with allowing passing touchdowns, being 28th overall in that, it just says a lot about that Washington defense and how much of a hit it took. Landon Collins being gone, I don't really think is going to hurt them a whole lot, and putting in Kendall Fuller, I think, can be good for them. William Jackson III, Cam Curl, and Bobby McCain being there, I think, can help out Washington. But overall, this just kind of looks like the same team from last year. So I'm going to give Washington a record of 7-10. Just a rough year for the Commanders. In second place, kind of dicey to pick, but in second place, I'm actually going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, when aren't the expectations high in Dallas? They almost never aren't. I mean, last year with that offense being first in points per game and first in yards per game, there is a lot to expect. Losing Amari Cooper might hurt them a little bit, and the O-line took losses with Connor Williams and Lyle Collins being gone. But, you know, they were both major contributors, but they did allow the fewest sacks last year, which is why they used their first-round pick on Tyler Smith. Dak Prescott, amazing year last year. 37 touchdowns, 10 picks, a 104.2 rating. No Cedric Wilson, but they still have Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and they added James Washington to help out as well. Zeke being still there, obviously, is going to help out, and I expect him to split carries with Tony Pollard. I just don't think the offense will be as explosive last year with those 2 losses, but there's still more than enough firepower to be a threat for the Dallas Cowboys. As far as their defense goes, it's what's known as a risk-reward type of defense, because the risks become rewards with being first in turnovers, but allowing a lot of big plays. And the epitome of that is a guy named Trayvon Diggs, who had 11 picks last year, but he does allow a lot of touchdowns as well, pretty much putting Jameis Winston at corner. They did have the 4th most QB hits last year, 13th in sacks, 7th in points per game overall, and the 3rd lowest completion percentage. This Dallas defense is a little suspect, but it's more than productive enough for them to be above water. You know, with Anthony Brown being there, Jordan Lewis being there, Malik Hooker being there, and the secondary, as I said, does give up a lot of touchdowns, being 29th in pass defense. Losing Randy Gregory, I think, is going to hurt, but Doris Armstrong being there, and of course, the meat of that being DeMarcus Lawrence with 7 sacks last year, Sam Williams being drafted in the 2nd round, and of course, Micah Parsons, who had a phenomenal rookie year last year with 13 sacks, and he's a very physical player. Leighton Vander Esch needs to be productive the 2 pretty much need to offset as far as the front goes. So overall, this is still a really good Dallas team, but they just had, a couple losses this year that I think are going to hurt them overall, and I have to dock them a little bit. But still, 11-6 is my prediction for the Cowboys. Good enough to get back to the playoffs. So, winning the NFC East. I actually think the Philadelphia Eagles take the NFC East. Firstly, because it keeps the pattern alive of no repeat champions in that division since 2004, and I won't predict it to happen until it's broken. That's just me. And secondly, Jalen Hurts, he has a lot to prove for his 2nd year. Rush offense was 2nd. Eagles are a very good run and ground pound team. Miles Sanders and Boston Scott proved to be a 1-2. Jordan Howard, reliable vet for him. Ken Gainwell there. A.J. Brown is pretty useful. Devonta Smith had 916 yards last year. Quez Watkins is good. Dallas Goedert pretty much being the catalyst of that offense rather. Their O-line was ranked 3rd last year, and the offense is a work in progress, but I think Philly one-ups it this year with what they have now. 12th in points per game, 5th fewest turnovers. This is a team that takes great care of the ball. Eagles are going to be tough to beat offensively. As far as the defense goes, they have some big changes. 18th in points per game, 31st in sacks last year, 25th in QB hits. Eagles obviously need to improve on that. Brandon Graham coming back is big for them. Hassan Reddick being added, that was a big acquisition for him. Josh Sweat is there. Javon Hargrave is back. Fletcher Cox, always a good player for him. Drafting Jordan Davis is big for him, and it complements the rush defense big time. Kazir White being added is going to help out. TJ Edwards coming in is going to be good. Anthony Harris, I expect him to be good. Big play, Darius Slay looked good in his first year in Philly Green, and I expect him to live up in the second year. Avonte Maddox, a really good player for him. Adding James Bradbury is going to help out, but allowing 8 touchdowns has to do better. Pass defense was 23rd, and they allowed the fewest yards per catch as far as the pass defense goes. So overall, this is a good young Philly team that did make some strides, and I really do think that they are ready to one-up Dallas in the division as for all the acquisitions they made. I still think they finished with the same record as the Cowboys, though, but I give them one more win within the division to make that possible. 11-6, my record prediction for the Philadelphia Eagles. Moving to the NFC North, in last place, to no one's surprise, the Detroit Lions. You know, it's really unfair to criticize Dan Campbell. He cannot be criticized fully. He is a good coach for him, and the players like to play for him. He just has no talent. And so I think naturally he's just going to expect more production. Drafting Jameson Williams is going to be big for him, and he should help greatly from that 25th in points per game, 22nd in yards per game. Jared Goff isn't the full problem either. I mean, he had okay numbers, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks, a 91.5 rating, but he's just not the long-term guy, plain and simple. I will say, though, I really do like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 912 yards. I expect him to have a great second year. TJ Hawkinson's really good, and DeAndre Swift is a Swiss Army knife as well. But that offensive line needs to be better than 16th. So overall, Detroit has an offense that can be somewhat productive, but it's just a work in progress. The defense, though, terrible. 31st in everything, virtually the worst defense. Drafting Aiden Hutchinson is going to be a big call to help, as is Josh Paschal. But it's just Detroit's defense. I just don't think they made a lot to improve. I expect to still be bottom 5 this year, and I think that's where the majority of their L's are going to come in. Detroit, I don't expect them to do a whole lot. 4-13, my prediction for the Lions. Third place, I got the Chicago Bears, another bad team in this division. Even though Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, a.k.a. Dumb and Dumber, are gone, I just don't think the Bears got a whole lot better. 27th in points per game, 24th in yards per game, 21st in rush offense, the 21st ranked O-line. They got 3 to 4 new starters, but just no big names. They allowed the most sacks in the league last year, and that has to beg the question, what do we think of Justin Fields? He was 23rd in pass attempts last year. He's shown flashes with his legs and his playmaking ability, but can he live up under a new offensive system and a new head coach? Darnell Mooney, a really good player for him, 1,055 yards last year. Cole Kmet is good. Robinson is gone. And I think adding Byron Pringle for the red zone threats is going to help out the offense a little bit. And David Montgomery, I think, is good. But overall, this Bears defense needs a lot of work done. As far as the defense goes, Khalil Mack being gone is going to hinder them a lot. Akeem Hicks being gone is going to hurt them too. 22nd in points per game last year. Dead last in passer rating. That's going to blow for the Bears. And then listen to these losses that they had. Eddie Goldman, Jamal Nichols, and Alex Ogletree all being gone, being replaced by Travis Gibson, Justin Jones, and Nicholas Moreau, and Caleb Johnson respectively. Is that enough? I don't know. This Bears team took a lot of beatings this offseason, and with that 19th ranked rush defense, I don't know. Chicago's just going to have another rough year. Robert Quinn is a stud, 18.5 sacks. I think I said Myles Garrett was second in sacks, but I forgot about Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn is amazing, though. Fourth most, they had the fourth most sacks last year, but the pass rush was just mediocre. I just don't know how that's possible. And, they were last in pass defense and yards per game, which is why I think that defense is taking a hit. Eddie Johnson coming back is going to be big, and Jalen Johnson and Roquan Smith could be his last year in Chicago. I just don't think this is a good Bears team at all, and I got them taking another step back with the losses. 5-12, my prediction for the Bears. In second place, the Minnesota Vikings, the most underestimated team in the NFL, in my opinion. Their offense is as good as it gets when they are clicking. 12th in yards per game, 14th in points per game, and they're getting some pieces back. Dalvin Cook, when he's healthy, is good for 1,100 yards or more. And then the O-line, it just can't be an excuse anymore. I know a lot of people like to pin on that, but it just can't be an excuse anymore. Ed Ingram is there at right guard, and they need to alleviate the pressure from Kirk, who the offensive line the offensive line doesn't allow a lot of sacks. They allowed the 5th fewest sacks. And Kirk Cousins thrived. 33 touchdowns, 7 picks, a 103.1 rating. A really good year from Kirk Cousins. Offensive line needs to step it up. Ty Conklin, KJ Osborne, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson, who had 1,616 yards last year. It's just an unbelievable trio of fire. It's just an unbelievable hodgepodge of firepower that the Vikings have on offense, and I expect them to be one of the top offensive teams this year. There's no excuse. Defensively, can't say the same. 24th in points per game, 30th in yards per game. Rush defense was absolutely terrible. They got murdered up front by the rush defense. Pass defense was really bad as well, not much of an upgrade. Breeland and Woods are both gone. That's going to sting. Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth were drafted. That can help out, but I don't know. They added Shannon Sullivan, and is Patrick Peterson done? He's become a veteran now. Is he done? Cameron Dantzler played a good role. The pass rush was good. I mean, despite how bad that overall defense was, being 2nd in sacks and 10th in QB hits is a massive dub. Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith are there. I think that's going to help out big time. Armon Watts and DJ Wonnum. It's just stacked with a pass rush right there. Losing Anthony Barr will hurt a little bit, but Jordan Hicks and Eric Hendricks coming in, I think that will help out. So overall, this Vikings team looks really good, but I just don't think they're ready to take the NFC North crown just yet. But I got Minnesota finishing with a strong record of 10-7. And winning the NFC North once again, I got the Green Bay Packers. Although, you might want to say that you can't call them a guaranteed shoo-in for a Super Bowl contender. Why? Davante Adams is gone. Even with Adams being there, can you really call this offense elite? 10th in points per game, 10th in yards per game. With a guy like Aaron Rodgers, with all due respect, can you call it an elite offense? I don't know. Rodgers last year, 37 touchdowns, 4 picks, a 111.9 rating, and won another MVP. It's just a balanced attack with overall, And with that extension that he got, is he going to be able to play like he was without Davante Adams? He's eaten up all of Green Bay's cap up there. Looking at his targets, Lazard is there. Cobb is still there. Christian Watson drafted from them. Robert Tonyan is there. Aaron Jones is still in the backfield along with A.J. Dillon providing a good 1-2 punch, and the O-line needs to step it up too. On paper, this Green Bay offense should be fine, but I just think it's going to look significantly different without Davante Adams. Aaron Rodgers is already throwing some of the receivers under the bus at training camp. As far as the defense goes, I know Packer fans love to blame the defense for why Aaron Rodgers chokes in the playoffs, but how can you blame the defense when they didn't allow a single touchdown against the 49ers? The defense rose up, if anything, 14th in points per game, 9th in yards per game, and the 8th most takeaways. Secondary stepped up big time. Jair Alexander, a stud. Eric Stokes, really good. Rasul Douglas, really good. Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos are all good, but they gave up 14 touchdowns combined. That needs to change. Devondre Campbell is good. The rush defense improved a little bit with Devontae Wyatt to help the rush D and the pass defense. Preston Smith, a really good physical player with 9 sacks. Rashawn Gary is there. Kenny Clark is there. Jerron Reed there. And Dean Lowry is there. So overall, I think Green Bay got better defensively. But just losing a catalyst like Davante Adams on that offense, I think Green Bay is going to take a couple steps back this year, but still be good enough to win the NFC North. I just don't think this is a shoo-in for a Super Bowl contender anymore. But still a strong 11-6 season. My prediction for the Green Bay Packers. Moving down to the NFC South. In last place, I think everyone with half a brain cell can predict this. The Atlanta Falcons. This is the worst team in the league, in my opinion. Matt Ryan is gone, and they just figure to be terrible. I mean, he didn't play like 7-win type of football at all last year. Because this offense being 26th in points per game, 29th in yards per game, and you replace it with Marcus Mariota, does Atlanta even have that system to be an RPO type of offense? It's a big risk right there for Atlanta, in my opinion, and very low reward. Calvin Ridley is suspended for betting, which is dumb in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is. Russell Gage is gone, and drafting Drake London, I think, can help out a little bit, but we'll see, I guess. Bryan Edwards being there. Cordell Patterson is a good bright spot for him. Amadeus Ezekias is there. Kyle Pitts, probably the only bright spot on that offense. He figures to be a star, and I expect him to have a good second year. But the O-line being 14th needs to step it up. They do get it back, but it needs to be better than that. But Atlanta, I just don't think they're going to be very productive on offense this year. The defense, even worse. 30th in points per game, 26th in yards per game. Half their starters are gone or benched. Dead last in sacks this year, or last year. Last in quarterback hits. Last in pressure. And when your leader in sacks and Dante Fowler being 4.5, he was their leader with sacks last year. Let that sink in. I think that says all you need to know about Atlanta's defense. Lorenzo Carter's a good addition, and he had 5, more than anyone on Atlanta's team. Grady Jarrett's there. Drafting Arnold Ebiketie is good. 26 in the pass defense, needs to step up, needless to say. And A.J. Terrell, while flourishing, I expect him to be more productive. Casey Hayward's coming in, and the rush defense is very mediocre. Deion Jones is good, but losing Hoye Alucon, replacing him for Rashaan Evans, I just don't think this Atlanta team is good at all. And like I said, I have them being the worst team in the league this year. 2-15, my prediction for Atlanta, just a miserable season for them. Third place, the Carolina Panthers. They got off to a jump start last year, 3-0, but, then they showed everyone that they're really not as good as advertised, and they benefited from a weak schedule to start. 29th in points per game, 30th in yards per game. The biggest addition for them is Baker Mayfield. He's coming in at quarterback. 17 touchdowns, 13 picks, and 83.1 rating. Is Baker elite? No. Is he serviceable? Yes. I think he can be a good enough starting quarterback for him. Or maybe they still go with Sam Darnold. I don't know. But the biggest thing about Carolina's offense, and this is the thing, like, if this guy is not in the picture, their offense is literally nothing. It has to be CMC. He needs to be healthy. Okay? They have the right to be concerned about about his injuries down there. DJ Moore at receiver is very good. 1,157 yards through the air for him. Robbie Anderson needs to be better. He's a good deep threat, but I expect him to be better. Ian Thomas being more of a blocker than a pass catcher. The offensive line was ranked 30th, and they were 28th in sacks, so obviously that has to improve with the line blocking right there with drafting Akeem Akanu. So yeah, Carolina, they obviously have a lot of work to do with offense. Defensively, Devon Jones, Jermaine Carter, Reddick and Gilmore are all gone. Obviously, that's going to be some big blows for that defense there. And with being 21st in points per game, second in yards per game, Carolina just lacks continuity with that defense. The pass defense being 22nd with the 15th ranked pass rush in sacks and hits. I mean, I just don't know where all these are coming from with Carolina. Brian Burns with 9 sacks last year was good. And how are they going to replace Reddick? How are they going to replace his production? Damian Wilson is in, Corey Littleton is in, Shaq Thompson's there. And the rush defense being 8th, I don't really think they need to do a whole lot there. But Dante Jackson needs to be healthy. J.C. Horn needs to be healthy as well. And C.J. Henderson needs to prove it. Overall, this Carolina team is very incomplete, and I expect a down year from them again, going 6-11. Second place, the New Orleans Saints. So, no Drew Brees and also no Sean Payton. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Saints adapt. Dennis Allen is their new head coach, and he was responsible a lot for how the Saints bullied Tom Brady last year. The offense last year, very ineffective. 28th in yards per game, 19th in points per game. That's what happens when you lose a franchise icon like Drew Brees. They did have a lot of injuries, though, so you can kind of cut them a little bit of slack, but still needs to be productive. Jameis Winston might be their guy. I mean, he was 5-2 in the games that he started last year, so if the Saints can improve on that, and they can still prove that Jameis Winston might be a winner, then that's good for them. But 30th in pass attempts. Needs to up it up a little bit. Is Michael Thomas good to go? Drafting Chris Olave. Is he good to go? Adding Jarvis Landry in the slot. I think that can be an upgrade for him. Marquez Callaway, good player. Adam Trotman, good player. Their offensive line, though, needs to step it up. 25th ranked O-line, and they were 15th in sacks, which is where Trevor Penny comes in. And I don't know how long Alvin Kamara is going to be out because he's suspended, but we'll see. But, of course, Taysom Hill can put a little bit of a spark in that offense, even though he's not a starting quarterback. So, overall for the Saints, it's a mishmash of good and not so good as far as their offense goes. The defense, though, keeps the Saints above water, and that's what's going to win them games. They were 4th in points per game last year, 7th in yards per game. Just a stout defense last year, and I expect that to win them games. They're just strong all across the boards. You know, 1st in the rush, 8th most sacks, 5th most QB hits, 4th in pass defense, 3rd fewest touchdowns allowed. I mean, this is just a good group of defense that the Saints had, and especially adding Marcus May and the Honey Badger of all guys, I expect the Saints defense to look even better. Marshawn Lattimore stepped up, and Paulson Adebo is really good. Chauncey Gardner still there, PJ Williams still there. Cam Jordan, an absolute monster with 12.5 sacks and 22 hits. And Marcus Davenport stepped up as well with 9 sacks. So the only real loss for the Saints, though, Quan Alexander is gone. But still, I think the Saints are going to be a good defensive team, and I think they'll make a case for being a playoff team. I just don't think that they're enough to get in there yet. But still, a 9-8 record is good enough for the New Orleans Saints. Winning the NFC South, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, no one's surprised. So I guess we should start with the obvious. The offense being 2nd in points per game and 2nd in yards per game, and it starts with guess who? Tom Brady. 43 touchdowns, 12 picks for him last year, a 102.1 rating. He retired and then came back, basically gave up football for Lent. So, yeah, not much to say there about Tom Brady. But the guy that he throws to the most, obviously, Chris Godwin, with 103 catches. I mean, Chris Godwin is obviously going to be in the mix as well. Mike Evans having an 8th straight season of at least 1,000 yards. Russell Gage could be a good number 3. Cameron Brate gets more reps, and the O-line is just elite, allowing the fewest sacks and throwing more than anyone in the league. This Tampa offense is just deadly and explosive, especially now with Leonard Fournette, coming into the mix and adding Julio Jones. The only real loss is that Rob Gronkowski actually did retire. So I expect Tampa to be more of the same offensively this year. Defense, it provides really good continuity with being 5th in points per game. Obviously, there you got JPP and Ndamukong Suh. Shaq Barrett's there. Shaq Barrett is there. Adding Akeem Hicks is going to be good. Vita Vea's there. Drafting Logan Hall. Anthony Nelson with, being an unknown guy, I think that he can make a splash. Logan Hall, a good draft pick. And then Devin White and Levante David. That is a very blitz-happy defense right there with being the 8th-ranked pass defense. Carlton Davis, Jamal Dean, Antoine Winfield are all studs, but losing Whitehead is going to be a little bit of a concern. But hey, Logan Ryan is coming in, and they have but still, some key pieces are going to be gone for that defense. But it's just the offense and just the defense overall are going to be more than enough for Tampa to win the division. 13-4. My prediction for the Buccaneers, and you can bet that they're a Super Bowl contender. And finishing up, we got the NFC West. In last place, the Seattle Seahawks. Well, Russell Wilson is gone, and that is the end of an era in Seattle. Even with him last year, the offense suffered. 16th in points per game, 20th in yards per game, and the question is, who do they start, Drew Lock or Geno Smith? Well, Geno Smith has a 100 rating, and he's statistically way better than Lock, and I think Bronco fans can even agree with that. So I think the logical choice is to start Geno Smith. At his disposal, he has Tyler Lockett, good for a 1,000-yard-plus season. DK Metcalf is really good for 967 yards. But Gerald Everett being out and getting Noah Fant with that Russell Wilson trade, that's going to be an upgrade, So with the O-line, it was always bad in Seattle with Russell Wilson there, but now that their 3 best linemen are gone, that's going to make it even worse. But drafting Charles Cross, I think, can help out, and Rashad Penny is probably the best player on that offense right now. So this Seattle offense is going to take a massive hit, needless to say, now that Russell Wilson is gone. As far as the defense goes, it's way different. 11th in points per game, 25th in takeaways, 28th in yards per game. They do have a good rush defense, it is good. But being 22nd in sacks and the 26th in pressure, 20th in the pass, it's just not looking good as a whole defensively for Seattle. Just not good just overall for them. Quandre Diggs is still a stud, and Jamal Adams can play up to the trade potential. But Kerry Hyder and Rasheem Green are gone. But Darrell Taylor, thankfully that he's being healthy, I think he's going to see more time. Quentin Jefferson is still good, and adding Shelby Harris as well. Still, it's just not a good team up there in Seattle, and I got them finishing 4-13. Now, moving on to third place, I got the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals last year won 11 games, but when you factor in that they started 7-0 and they dipped towards the end of last year, I don't know what to expect from Arizona. But they played well. 11th in points per game, 8th in yards per game, and the 4th fewest turnovers. Kyler Murray was a very effective runner, and he proved to be a very good evolving passer. 24 touchdowns, 10 picks, 100.6 rating. So, the biggest question down in the desert, how will he fare now that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be out for the first 6 games? So, that's going to be a big question mark down there. No Kirk, Hollywood Brown coming in. I think that can help out a little bit. Rondale Moore is there. AJ Green is back. Zach Ertz is back. And Trey McBride being drafted. I think the Cardinals have some good weapons at their disposal. James Conner, my former guy, I'm so glad to see him being productive down in the desert. Becoming a good dual threat. 37 catches, 375 yards, and 3 scores. And on the ground, being even better. 752 yards on the ground and 15 touchdowns last year for James Conner. I'm so happy to see him doing well down in Phoenix. He needs it. The O-line was very bad last year, being 29th, and it just lacks continuity. So, yeah, Arizona's offense needs work. The defense last year stepped up, being 11th in points per game, 11th in yards per game, and they were 7th in turnovers, 13th in sacks. So, I just expect that to continue. Marcus Golden is good, but Chandler Jones, losing him is going to be tough. So J.J. Watt, I think if anyone is to replace that, it's him, and he's the best replacement by far. Zach Allen is good as well. Pass defense being 19th, that's a little bit alarming, but there is room for improvement because they're bringing the whole secondary back. Marco Wilson to get more reps and, allowing 7 touchdowns, that obviously has to improve. Byron Murphy's there. Budda Baker's still really good. Jalen Thompson is there, and the rush defense needs to improve as well, being 26. In my opinion, they need more of the interior like we do, but no more Hicks being there. That's going to hurt them a little bit. But Isaiah Simmons and Collins on the other end, I think that's going to help them out. So overall, this Cardinal team is good, but I just don't think they're 11-win territory good with the losses that they have, so I'm going to dock them a little bit. 9-8, my prediction for the Cardinals. And they're also just going to miss D-Hop for the first couple games, for the first 6 games. Second place, the San Francisco 49ers. So, another team facing quarterback drama. Well, maybe not drama, but a decision. Do they start Jimmy G or do they start Trey Lance? So you look at the offense last year, 13th in points per game, 20th in turnovers. They were top 5 in rush attempts, and the O-line is among the best. Deebo Samuel, they got to pay that guy wide receiver money. His versatility and his intuitiveness is just unmatched in this league. It's something I've never seen it before. Of course, George Kittle is the catalyst of that offense there, and Christian Ayuk is great, and Juan Jennings is really good as well. So overall, this 49er offense is good, but which quarterback fits the right, system for him? Because Mitchell is obviously expected to have a big year. So we'll see. Defense, outstanding. 9th in points per game, 3rd in yards per game, and one of the strongest pass rushes in the league. Nick Bosa, 5th in sacks last year, causes a lot of pressure up front, and just a bully there. Tre'Davious Ward is really good. Manny Mosley, really good. Ambry Thompson, entering his 2nd season. I expect a good year from him. Jimmy Ward is really good. Eric Armstead is good. But losing a few up front, I think, can hinder them a little bit, but nothing too much to worry about. Javon Kinlaw and a healthy D Ford, I think, will make up ground for it. And then, of course, you got Drake Jackson and Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. The defense allows, the 7th fewest rushing yards in the game, and I think that's going to keep them above water. Very much so. It's just a matter of what the offense comes to. But this is by far a playoff team. 12-5, my prediction for the 49ers. And winning the NFC West, I got the LA Rams once again. This is just the cream of the crop in the NFC, in my opinion. And it starts with that offense. 7th in points per game, 9th in yards per game. Matthew Stafford, phenomenal year in his first year in LA. He did lead the league in turnovers, or interceptions rather. A lot of people forget about that, but it's easy to forget because he had 41 touchdowns and a 102.9 rating. Just a magnificent year for Matthew Stafford, playing like he earned that trade. The O-line was 9th, phenomenal season, allowed the 6th fewest sacks, but they were bottom in pressure. Losing Whitworth and Corbin are going to hurt a little bit for the Rams, but when you got a guy like Cooper Kupp, who's a Triple Crown guy, 145 yards, 145 catches, 1,947 yards receiving, and the Offensive Player of the Year and the Super Bowl MVP, it just doesn't seem to matter. OBJ is gone, but he's still possible to return, so don't count him completely out. Allen Robinson added a guy. Van Jefferson becoming quite the deep threat guy for him. Tyler Higbee, a really good target for him. Henderson and Akers are there. This Rams offense is as deadly as you get. Is it as good as the greatest show on turf? Well, we'll see. As far as the defense goes, I was surprised that their defense was where it was, considering they got AD on that D-line. But 15th in points per game, 17th in yards per game, 21st in pressure rating, but the 3rd in sacks. Like I said, surprising considering who they got at number 99 right there in AD. And he got paid. Rightfully so. So, yeah, that's all you really need to say about the Rams defense there. But still, Leonard Floyd is there. They did lose Von Miller, but Terrell Lewis is going to get more reps. Greg Gaines is there. Their pass defense is still 5th in the league, and they had the 3rd most picks. Jalen Ramsey's still a good lockdown corner. And losing Darius Williams is going to hurt, but Troy Hill to get more reps as well. Jordan Fuller's still there. Taylor Rapp is there. Reed is gone. But guess who they got to complement Aaron Donald and Ernest Jones? Bobby Wagner. That is going to be phenomenal for the LA Rams right there. And I think that's going to increase their defense production a lot. So, yes, it's easy to see why this Rams team is very popular to repeat as Super Bowl champions, and in my eyes, I think they can get the number 1 in the NFC. 14-3, my prediction for the LA Rams. There's not a shot of a doubt that this is a Super Bowl contender once again, and if any team is to repeat, it's them. So, with that said, here are my NFC seeding predictions. My number 1 seed coming from the Los Angeles Rams. The 2nd seed, I think Tampa takes it. 3rd seed to me goes to Green Bay, and the Philadelphia Eagles, I think they take the 4th seed this year. Moving on down now to the wild cards. The 5th seed, I think, goes to the San Francisco 49ers. The 6th seed, I actually have the Minnesota Vikings taking the 6th seed, going back to the playoffs. And the Dallas Cowboys, they just sneak in as the number 7 seed. So there you have it. Those are my NFL season predictions for 2022. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And hey, man, an hour 45 minutes. If you watched all this in that time, I applaud you. You're an absolute legend and an absolute trooper. If you didn't tune in, I don't blame you, because I go way into depth with these season predictions, and I like to run my mouth. But yeah, let's play football, guys. Steel Sermon checking on out for the day. May God bless you all, and may God bless the NFL, baby. Let's go!